The gunshot that killed their father echoed through the canyon for what felt like hours. But by the time Nora and her younger sister Natalie reached his body in the dusty street of Republic, Washington, the crowd had already begun to disperse like tumbleweeds in the wind. It was August of 1882, and the sun beat down mercilessly on the wooden storefronts lining the main road as Nora knelt beside the man who had raised them alone for the past decade, her hands shaking as she pressed them against the wound that had already stolen his life. Natalie stood frozen behind her, 18 years old and too shocked to cry, while Nora at 22 felt the weight of responsibility settle onto her shoulders like a yoke meant for oxen. Their father had been a prospector, one of the many drawn to the northeastern corner of Washington Territory by whispers of gold and silver in the hills, and now he was gone because some drunk fool in the saloon had taken offense to a perceived slight over a card game. The marshal had already taken the shooter away, but justice felt hollow when Nora knew it would not bring back the only parent they had left. The undertaker helped them carry their father to his establishment, and Nora spent the last of the money in her father's pockets on a simple pine coffin and a plot in the cemetery on the hill overlooking the town. She and Natalie stood alone at the graveside the next morning, no preacher available on such short notice, so Nora said what words she could remember from her mother's funeral all those years ago. Her voice cracked halfway through, and Natalie finally broke down sobbing, her slender frame shaking with the force of her grief. They walked back to the small cabin their father had built on the outskirts of town, a modest structure with 2 rooms and a loft where the sisters had always slept together for warmth during the harsh winters. Nora had never felt so alone despite having Natalie by her side. Their father had left them nothing but the cabin, his mining claim that had never produced more than a few promising flakes, and a milk cow named Bessie who grazed in the small fenced area behind the house. That first night without him, Nora lay awake in the loft listening to Natalie's quiet crying, her own eyes dry because she felt she needed to be strong. She thought about what they would do now, how 2 young women alone could possibly survive in a rough mining town where men outnumbered women 20-1 and the law was often whatever the man with the fastest draw said it was. They had a small garden that produced vegetables in the summer, the cow gave them milk to drink and occasionally sell, and Nora knew how to sew well enough that she might take in mending work. It would have to be enough. The second day brought visitors, men from town who had known their father, offering condolences that felt sincere enough, but whose eyes lingered too long on Natalie's pretty face and golden hair. Nora thanked them politely and closed the door firmly, making sure to slide the heavy wooden bar across it once they left. She had never thought much about being vulnerable before, but now she felt it in her bones, a constant awareness that they were 2 women alone in a place where that could mean trouble. By the 3rd night, Nora had barely slept more than a few hours total. She sat in the main room with their father's old rifle across her lap, startling at every sound from outside. Natalie had finally cried herself into exhaustion and slept in the loft, but Nora could not let herself rest. She kept thinking about the men who had come by, about the way some of them had looked at their little cabin with its garden and cow as if calculating its value, about how easy it would be for someone to decide that 2 women had no business holding on to property that a man could use. The 4th night, she heard the sound of a horse approaching just after sundown. Nora had been sitting on the front porch with the rifle, ostensibly shelling peas from the garden but really keeping watch over the dusty road that led to their cabin. She stood quickly, her heart hammering in her chest, and called back to Natalie, who was inside preparing their meager supper. The rider came into view slowly, a tall figure on a rangy sorrel horse, and as he drew closer Nora could make out more details. He was young, perhaps mid-20s, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and a face tanned from long days in the sun. He wore typical cowboy gear, leather chaps over denim pants, a worn work shirt, and a hat that had seen better days. A pistol hung at his hip, and a rifle rested in a scabbard attached to his saddle. He raised one hand in a peaceful gesture when he was still 20 yards away, then called out in a voice that carried easily across the evening air. "Evening, miss. I do not mean any trouble. Just passing through and saw your place here. Would it be all right if I watered my horse at your well? Nora kept the rifle pointed at the ground but visible, her finger near the trigger. We do not know you. No, madam, you do not. He stopped his horse a respectful distance away, not advancing any further without permission. Name is Ryder Prescott. I have been working cattle drives up from Texas, but the outfit I was with disbanded in Spokane Falls. I am heading north to see about ranch work in the Okanagan country, just traveling through Republic. There was something about his manner that seemed genuine, a politeness that felt different from the calculating friendliness of the men who had visited earlier. Nora hesitated, then nodded toward the well. You can water your horse, but then you should move along. It will be dark soon. Yes, madam. Thank you. He dismounted and led his horse to the well, working the pump handle to fill the trough. The animal drank deeply, and Nora watched the man from the porch, noting how he moved with an easy confidence that came from someone comfortable in his own skin. When the horse had drunk its fill, he pumped more water and splashed some on his own face, washing away the dust of the road. Natalie appeared in the doorway behind Nora, curious about their visitor, despite her sister's warnings to stay inside. Ryder glanced up and saw both sisters, and something shifted in his expression. A flash of understanding or perhaps recognition of a situation he had seen before. He led his horse back toward the road but paused before mounting up. Begging your pardon, but I heard in town about your father. I am sorry for your loss. I know what it is like to be alone in country like this. Nora felt her throat tighten unexpectedly. Thank you. We are managing. He nodded, but his eyes surveyed the cabin, the surrounding area, the way the light was fading fast from the sky. You two out here alone? That is none of your concern. Nora's voice came out sharper than she intended, defensive. No, madam, you are right. It is not. He put his foot in the stirrup, then paused again. But if you do not mind me saying, this is not the safest country for women alone. I passed a camp about a mile back, 3 men who looked like they had been drinking. They asked me if I knew about a cabin out this way where a prospector had died, leaving his daughters alone. Nora felt ice flood her veins. What did you tell them? Told them I did not know anything about it, that I was just passing through. He settled into his saddle, his expression serious. But they are going to find this place eventually. Republic is not that big and people talk. Natalie moved closer to Nora, and Nora could feel her sister trembling. She wanted to tell the stranger to leave, that they could handle themselves, but the truth was she had no idea if that was true. For nights of barely sleeping had left her exhausted and frightened, and the thought of men coming to their cabin with ill intentions made her want to gather Natalie and run into the hills. Ryder seemed to read something in her expression because he said quietly, I can camp out here tonight if you like. Keep watch. Make sure nobody bothers you. Why would you do that? Nora asked suspiciously. He was quiet for a moment, looking out toward the darkening hills. I had a sister once. She was about your age, he said, nodding toward Natalie. She died of fever 3 years back, along with my ma. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I had not been there, if they had been alone when they got sick. It seems to me like maybe I can help someone else's sister now. The sincerity in his voice cracked something in Nora's carefully maintained composure. She blinked hard against the sudden sting of tears and looked at Natalie, who met her eyes with a mixture of fear and hope. We do not have money to pay you, Nora said. Did not ask for any. He dismounted again and led his horse to a spot about 30 yards from the cabin, near a cluster of pine trees. I will make camp here. You two go inside, bar your door and try to get some rest. I will keep watch until dawn. Nora wanted to argue, wanted to maintain the independence and strength she had been forcing herself to project, but exhaustion and relief won out. There is stew left from supper. I can bring you some. That would be kind, thank you. She went inside with Natalie, ladled a generous portion of the vegetable stew into a tin bowl, and cut several thick slices of the bread she had baked the day before. When she brought it out to where Ryder was unsaddling his horse, he accepted it gratefully. Thank you, Mississippi. Nora Pruitt. My sister is Natalie. Pleasure to meet you both, even under these circumstances. He settled onto his bedroll with the bowl, and Nora noticed he positioned himself so he had a clear view of the road and the cabin both. She returned to the house, barred the door as he had suggested, and climbed up to the loft where Natalie was already lying under their shared quilt. For the first time in 4 nights, Nora felt like she might actually be able to sleep. There was something reassuring about knowing someone was watching over them, even if that someone was a stranger. Do you trust him? Natalie whispered in the darkness. I do not know, Nora admitted, but I think we do not have much choice right now. At least he is only one man and he seems decent. Better than the alternative of those 3 he mentioned. Natalie was quiet for a moment. He has kind eyes. Nora had noticed that too, though she would not admit it. She closed her eyes and finally, mercifully, fell into a deep sleep. She woke once in the middle of the night to the sound of voices outside. Her heart leaped into her throat, and she crept to the small window in the loft that overlooked the front of the cabin. In the moonlight, she could see Ryder standing near his camp, his rifle in his hands, facing 3 figures on horseback. The men Ryder had warned them about, she realized. Place looks empty. One of the men was saying, his words slightly slurred. Maybe they took off already. Or maybe they are sleeping like normal folks do at this hour, Ryder replied calmly. Either way, I suggest you move along. Nothing here for you. You the husband? Brother? Another man asked. I am someone who is telling you to ride on before there is trouble. The first man laughed. 3 against 1. I like those odds. Then you are not very good at math. Ryder's voice remained level, but there was steel underneath it. First shot I fire will wake up everyone in earshot. Second shot will bring the marshal if he is worth anything. And I promise you I can get at least 2 of you before you get me. Question is, which 2 of you want to die tonight over nothing? The tension stretched out for what felt like an eternity. Nora held her breath. Her hands clenched so tight her nails bit into her palms. Then one of the men, perhaps more sober than the others, turned his horse. This is not worth it. Come on. The others grumbled but followed, and Nora watched them disappear back down the road toward town. Ryder stood watching until they were completely out of sight, then slowly lowered his rifle. He glanced toward the cabin, and Nora wondered if he knew she was watching. She moved back from the window and returned to the quilt beside Natalie, who had somehow slept through the entire exchange. In the morning, Nora woke to sunlight streaming through the loft window and the smell of coffee. She sat up, confused, and climbed down the ladder to find Ryder had built up their small cooking fire outside and was making coffee in a battered pot from his saddlebags. The bar was still across the door from the inside, so he had not entered the cabin, just worked with what was available outside. She unbarred the door and stepped out onto the porch. You are still here. He looked up from the fire and smiled slightly. Said I would stay until dawn. Sun has been up about an hour now, so I have kept my word. Coffee is ready if you want some. Nora accepted a cup gratefully, the hot liquid helping to clear the fog from her mind. Those men came last night. You saw that, did you? I hoped we had not woken you. What did you say to make them leave? He shrugged. Just pointed out the reality of the situation. Most men, when they are drunk and looking for trouble, they have not really thought it through. You make them think, and often they reconsider. You could have been killed. Could have. He sipped his own coffee. But I was not. Natalie emerged from the cabin, her hair loose around her shoulders and her face still puffy from sleep. Ryder politely averted his eyes and busied himself with the fire while she woke up properly. Nora went back inside to start breakfast, and before long she had scrambled eggs and more bread ready. She brought out portions for all three of them, and they sat in the morning sunshine eating together. "Where will you go now?" Nora asked. Ryder considered the question. "I was planning to head north today, like I said. But I have been thinking those men might come back. Maybe not today, but eventually. They know you are here now, and word will spread that you are alone. I do not feel right just leaving you to handle that by yourselves. We cannot expect you to stay and protect us," Nora said, though part of her desperately wanted him to do exactly that. "You have your own life, your own plans. Plans are just ideas until you act on them. They can change." He met her eyes directly. "What if I stayed on for a while? I could help around the place, provide some security, and you two would not have to worry so much. I would not ask for anything except meals and a place to put my bedroll at night." Nora wanted to say yes immediately but forced herself to think practically. People would talk. A single man staying with two unmarried women. It would ruin our reputations. "Then I will camp outside like I did last night. Anyone asks, I am just a hired hand helping out while you get back on your feet after your father's death. Nothing improper about that." Natalie spoke up for the first time that morning. "I think we should let him stay, Nora. I am scared. I know you are too, even if you do not show it." Nora looked at her sister's frightened face, then back at Ryder's steady, honest expression. She thought about the rifle on her lap for the past 4 nights, about the men who had come sniffing around, about how exhausted and overwhelmed she felt trying to figure out how they would survive. "All right," she said finally, "but only for a little while until we figure out what we are going to do long term." Relief flashed across Ryder's face. "That is all I ask." He proved his worth that very first day. While Nora worked in the garden and Natalie did laundry, Ryder repaired the fence around Bessie's grazing area that had been sagging for weeks. He fixed a loose board on the porch that their father had kept meaning to get to, chopped enough firewood to last them a week, and rode into town to buy supplies with money from his own pocket, refusing to let Nora pay him back. When he returned from town, his expression was serious. "There is talk going around about you too. Some men think you will have to sell this place cheap since you cannot work the mining claim yourselves. Others are making suggestions about what you might have to do to earn money." Nora felt her face flush with anger and shame. "Let them talk. I also heard something else. The man who killed your father, he is scheduled to hang next week. They moved the trial up because the evidence was clear and there were plenty of witnesses. Thought you should know." Nora absorbed this information with mixed feelings. She had been so focused on survival that she had not even thought about the trial or what justice might look like. "Thank you for telling me." That evening, she made a proper dinner with the supplies Ryder had brought, including a chicken he had purchased in town. As they ate together, she found herself studying him when she thought he was not looking. He had a nice face, she decided, strong features but with a gentleness around his eyes that spoke of kindness. His hands were work-roughened and capable, and he moved with a quiet confidence that made her feel safe. Over the next week, Ryder became an integral part of their daily lives. He woke early each morning and had coffee ready by the time Nora came outside. He worked on various projects around the property during the day, always respectful of the sisters' privacy, always maintaining a proper distance. In the evenings, they would sit together and talk, sharing stories about their pasts and their dreams for the future. Nora learned that Ryder had grown up on a small ranch in Texas, that he had been working cattle drives for 5 years to save money to buy his own land someday. He was 25 years old, had never been married, and had a quiet sense of humor that occasionally surprised her into laughter. He read books when he could get his hands on them, which was rare in his line of work, and he played a harmonica that had belonged to his father. In turn, she told him about growing up with their mother until she died when Nora was 12, about their father's constant optimism about his mining claim despite years of disappointment, about her dreams of maybe opening a dress shop someday if she could save enough money. Natalie shared less, still grieving and shy around Ryder, but slowly she began to relax in his presence. The day of the hanging, Ryder offered to accompany the sisters into town if they wanted to witness the execution. Nora declined, feeling that watching a man die, even the man who killed her father, would not bring her any peace. Instead, they stayed at the cabin, and Nora worked in her garden, pulling weeds with more force than necessary while trying not to think about the noose and the trap door. When Ryder returned from town that afternoon, he simply said, "It is done," and she nodded, feeling a chapter of her life close even as uncertainty about the future remained. 2 weeks after Ryder had first camped outside their cabin, Nora woke to find it raining heavily, the first real rain in weeks. She came outside with a shawl wrapped around her shoulders and saw that Ryder's bedroll was soaked, and he was huddled under a tree trying to stay dry while keeping watch over the cabin. Something about the sight of him, stubbornly maintaining his post despite being cold and wet, made her decision for her. She walked out into the rain, ignoring how it plastered her hair to her head and soaked through her dress. "Ryder, this is ridiculous. Come inside." He looked up at her, water dripping from the brim of his hat. "People would talk. People are already talking. At least this way you would not catch pneumonia." She held out her hand. "Please, you have done so much for us. Let us do this for you." He hesitated, then accepted her hand and let her pull him to his feet. They gathered his wet bedroll and saddlebags and hurried to the cabin. Inside, Nora directed him to hang his wet things by the fire while she put coffee on to heat. Natalie came down from the loft, took in the situation, and simply smiled before starting to make breakfast. Felt natural having him inside, Nora realized, like he belonged there with them. The thought both comforted and frightened her. After breakfast, the rain continued, and Ryder mentioned that the roof of the cabin was leaking in one corner. He climbed up in the rain to patch it with some tar and boards, and when he came back inside he was soaked through again. Nora insisted he change into one of their father's old shirts that she had been unable to part with, and while it was slightly small on Ryder's broader frame, at least it was dry. They spent the day inside, playing cards and talking while the rain drummed on the roof. Nora found herself acutely aware of Ryder's presence in their small space, the way he took up room just by existing, the deep timbre of his voice, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled at something Natalie said. She caught herself staring more than once and forced her attention back to the cards in her hand. That night, Ryder slept on the floor by the fire while the sisters retreated to the loft. Nora lay awake for a long time, listening to the sound of his breathing below, feeling something shift inside her chest that she was not quite ready to name. The rain cleared by morning, leaving everything fresh and clean. Ryder moved his bedroll back outside, but something had changed between them. There was a new ease, a familiarity that came from sharing space and beginning to trust. Over the following weeks, Nora found herself looking forward to seeing Ryder each morning, to their conversations in the evening, to the way he made her laugh with his dry observations about the absurdities of life in a mining town. She noticed small things about him. The way he always saved the best portions of food for her and Natalie, how he sang quietly to himself while he worked, the gentleness with which he handled their cow and the other animals. She also noticed how other women in town looked at him on the rare occasions they all went into Republic together. Ryder was a handsome man, she realized, though it was more than just his looks. There was something about his steady, reliable nature that drew people to him. But he seemed oblivious to the attention, always staying close to Nora and Natalie, always making it clear without words that he was with them. One evening in late September, Nearly 6 weeks after Ryder had first appeared at their cabin, Nora was sitting on the porch watching the sunset when he joined her. Natalie was inside preparing supper, and for once they had a moment of privacy. "I have been thinking," Ryder said slowly, "about my plans to go north." Nora's heart sank, though she tried to keep her expression neutral. "Oh, I do not think I want to go anymore." He turned to look at her directly. "The truth is, Nora, I am happy here. Happier than I have been in a long time. I like working on this place. I like your sister and I." He paused, seeming to gather courage. "I like you. More than I should probably admit." Nora felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Ryder, I know it has not been that long, and I know you are still grieving your father. I do not expect anything from you, but I wanted you to know how I feel, where I stand." He looked down at his hands. "If you want me to leave, I will. But if you will let me stay, I would like to keep helping. Maybe see where this goes between us." Her heart was hammering so hard she was sure he could hear it. "I do not want you to leave," she said quietly. "The truth is, I have been dreading the day you would move on. These past weeks, having you here, it has made everything more bearable. More than bearable. I have been happy too." He looked up at her, hope bright in his eyes. Yeah. She reached out and took his hand, feeling the calluses on his palm, the warmth of his skin. "But I do not know what we are doing here, Ryder. We are 2 women alone, and you are an unmarried man. Eventually people's talk will become more than just talk. Then maybe we should give them something definite to talk about." He squeezed her hand gently. "Marry me, Nora. Not right away if you are not ready, but someday. Let me stay here properly as your husband. We can work this place together, build a real life." She stared at him, stunned. "You are proposing? We have known each other less than 2 months. I know it is fast, but when you know, you know. And I know that I want to spend my days working alongside you, my evenings talking with you, my life building something with you." His voice was earnest, vulnerable in a way she had never heard from him before. "I know you are smart and strong and kinder than you give yourself credit for. I know you put your sister first always, which tells me what kind of person you are. I know that when you smile, really smile, it makes me feel like I could do anything. That is enough for me." Tears pricked at Nora's eyes. She thought about the weeks they had spent together, about how safe she felt with him, about the quiet joy she found in his company. She thought about her father, about what he would have wanted for her, and she knew he would have approved of a man like Ryder Prescott, someone honest and hardworking and good. "Yes," she said, the word coming out as barely more than a whisper. "Yes, I will marry you." The smile that broke across his face was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently, and the tender gesture made her breath catch. They told Natalie at supper, and her reaction was immediate joy mixed with a hint of worry. "But where will I go?" she asked. "You will want privacy, and this cabin is not big enough for 3. "You are not going anywhere," Nora said firmly. "This is your home. We will make it work." Ryder nodded in agreement. "Besides, I was thinking we could add on to the cabin. Build another room or 2. I have done construction work before. It would take time, but it is doable." They decided to wait until spring to marry, giving them time to prepare and also to allow a proper mourning period for Nora and Natalie's father. In the meantime, Ryder continued to sleep outside, though as fall deepened and the temperatures dropped, Nora worried about him constantly. He began work on expanding the cabin in October, spending his days cutting lumber from the trees on their property and carefully planning the addition. It would have 2 new rooms, he explained, one that could serve as a proper bedroom for Nora and him after they married, and another that Natalie could have to herself so she no longer had to sleep in the loft. As Ryder worked on the cabin, Nora found herself making a wedding dress in the evenings. sewing by lamplight while Natalie helped. She used fabric she had been saving for years, soft cream-colored cotton with delicate blue flowers embroidered along the hem. It was not fancy, but it was beautiful in its simplicity, and she poured all her hopes for the future into every stitch. She and Ryder stole moments together when they could, chaperoned conversations that grew increasingly personal as they learned more about each other. He told her about his fears that he would never amount to anything more than a cowhand, about his dreams of having land and a family. She told him about the loneliness of the past few years, about feeling invisible in a town full of men who only saw her as a woman alone, about her terror in the days after her father died. "You are the strongest person I know," he told her one evening as they sat together on the porch, carefully maintaining a respectable distance. "What you did, keeping yourself and Natalie safe, planning for the future, that takes courage." "I did not feel courageous. I felt terrified." "Courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting despite it." He looked at her with such warmth that she felt it down to her toes. "You amaze me, Nora Pruitt. I hope you know that." She did not know how to respond to such open admiration, so instead she reached out and took his hand, and they sat together in comfortable silence as the stars came out overhead. The first snow came in late November, dusting the hills around Republic with white. Ryder had finished the basic structure of the addition to the cabin, though there was still interior work to be done. He moved his bedroll into the new space, which at least had a roof and walls even if it lacked finishing touches, and Nora worried less about him freezing. December brought colder weather and shorter days. The town of Republic settled into its winter rhythm, with less mining activity and more time spent indoors. Nora and Natalie worked on preparations for Christmas, making candles and baking special treats, and Ryder surprised them by bringing home a small pine tree that they decorated with paper ornaments and strings of dried berries. On Christmas Eve, they sat together by the fire, and Ryder played his harmonica while Natalie sang carols she remembered from childhood. Nora watched her sister's face, saw how some of the sadness had lifted over the past months, how she smiled more easily now. They were healing, she realized, all three of them in different ways. Ryder gave her a gift that night, a book of poetry he had ordered from a catalog in town. She gave him a new shirt she had sewn, dark blue to match his eyes, and he looked so pleased that she had to resist the urge to kiss him right there in front of Natalie. They had not yet kissed, maintaining propriety despite their engagement, but Nora found herself thinking about it more and more. January of 1883 arrived with heavy snowfall that kept them close to the cabin for days at a time. Ryder worked on the interior of the new rooms, installing a proper floor and building furniture. Nora helped when she could, learning how to measure and cut and fit pieces together. She liked working alongside him, liked the easy partnership they had developed. One afternoon when Natalie had gone to visit a friend in town, Nora and Ryder found themselves alone in the new bedroom he was building. He was installing a window frame, and she was helping hold it in place while he secured it. Their hands brushed, and suddenly the air between them felt charged with electricity. "Nora," he said softly, and she looked up to find his face very close to hers. "Yes, I want to kiss you. May I?" Her heart stuttered in her chest. "Yes." He set down his tools and cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle and reverent. When his lips met hers, it was soft at first, tentative, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. But she did not want to. She pressed closer, her hands coming up to rest on his chest, feeling his heart hammering as hard as hers. The kiss deepened, becoming more confident, and Nora felt like she was falling and flying at the same time. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Ryder rested his forehead against hers. "I have been wanting to do that for weeks," he admitted. "Me too," she whispered. They kissed again, and then several more times, making up for months of restraint. Eventually they forced themselves apart, aware that Natalie would be home soon and that they needed to maintain some semblance of propriety. But something had shifted between them, an intimacy that went beyond the physical, a recognition that they were truly committed to building a life together. February brought the beginning of wedding preparations in earnest. They set the date for the first week of April, when the weather would be better and they could invite people from town to celebrate with them. Nora finished her dress and began working on a new dress for Natalie to wear as her bridesmaid. Ryder rode into town and spoke with the circuit preacher, arranging for him to perform the ceremony. They also made plans for the future of the property. Ryder had ideas about expanding their small farm, maybe raising chickens and pigs in addition to Bessie, planting a larger garden that could produce enough vegetables to sell in town. Nora wanted to take in more sewing work, build up a reputation as a seamstress. Together, they believed they could make a decent living. One evening in early March, as they sat together after supper, Ryder brought up a subject they had been avoiding. "What about your father's mining claim? Are you going to try to work it or sell it?" Nora had been thinking about this for weeks. "I do not think it is worth working. My father spent years on it and found almost nothing. I think we should sell it to whoever will buy it and use that money to invest in the farm." "Are you sure? It was his dream." "It was his dream," she agreed. "But it is not mine. My dream is building a life here with you, making this place into a real home. The claim is just land with some holes dug in it. We have better uses for our time." He nodded slowly. "If you are sure, I know a man in town who has been buying up claims. He might give you a fair price." Within the week, they had sold the mining claim for $300, a small fortune for women who had been scraping by. Nora cried when the man handed over the money, not from sadness but from relief. It felt like freedom, like release from the burden of her father's unfulfilled dreams. They used some of the money to buy supplies for the farm, including lumber to build a chicken coop and fencing for a pig pen. Ryder bought 6 hens and a rooster, plus 2 young pigs that would be ready to butcher by fall. The property suddenly felt alive with activity and possibility. As winter began to give way to early spring, Nora found herself increasingly excited about the wedding. She loved Ryder more with each passing day, loved the way he made her laugh, the way he treated Natalie like a beloved younger sister, the way he looked at her as if she was the most precious thing in his world. She found herself daydreaming about their wedding night, about what it would be like to finally share a bed with him, to have no barriers between them. The week before the wedding, Natalie helped Nora bathe and wash her hair, then sat with her on the porch brushing it dry in the spring sunshine. "You are happy, are you not?" Natalie asked. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Nora admitted. "I know it has not even been a year since Papa died, and I still miss him terribly. But Ryder, he makes me feel like life can be good again. He is a good man. I am glad you found each other." Natalie was quiet for a moment. "Do you think I will find someone someday?" "Of course you will. You are beautiful and kind, Natalie. When the right man comes along, he will be lucky to have you. I want what you and Ryder have. That way he looks at you, like you are his whole world. That is what love should be." Nora squeezed her sister's hand. "You will have it. I promise." The night before the wedding, Nora could barely sleep. She lay in the loft with Natalie, staring at the ceiling beams, her mind racing with thoughts of the next day. She was not nervous about marrying Ryder. She was certain of her choice, but she was overwhelmed by how much her life was about to change. This time last year, her father had been alive, and she had been going through the motions of each day without thinking much about the future. Now her father was gone, but in his place was Ryder, a man she had not even known existed until he rode up to their cabin one August evening. Life was strange that way, she thought, how it could take away and give back in equal measure, how loss could lead to unexpected joy. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright, A perfect April day. Natalie helped Nora dress in her cream-colored gown, braiding her dark hair and weaving in wildflowers they had picked the day before. When Nora looked at herself in the small mirror they owned, she barely recognized the happy, glowing woman staring back. They held the ceremony outside the cabin, with about 30 people from town gathered to witness. The circuit preacher arrived on time, a kindly older man who kept the service short and sweet. Ryder stood waiting for Nora in his best clothes, his hair neatly combed, looking so handsome her breath caught. When she took her place beside him, he whispered, "You are beautiful." The preacher led them through their vows, and when it came time for Ryder to say, "I do," his voice rang out strong and clear. Nora's own voice shook slightly with emotion, but she got the words out. And then the preacher was pronouncing them husband and wife, and Ryder was kissing her in front of everyone, his lips warm and sure against hers. The gathered crowd cheered, and Nora felt tears of happiness spill down her cheeks. Ryder wiped them away gently with his thumbs, smiling at her with such love that she thought her heart might burst. They had a simple celebration afterward, with food that the sisters and some neighbor women had prepared, and music from a fiddler who lived in town. Nora danced with her new husband, with Natalie, with some of the men who had known her father and wanted to congratulate her. But always her eyes returned to Ryder, watching her from across the yard with that special smile he saved just for her. As evening fell and the guests began to depart, Natalie hugged Nora tightly. "I am going to stay with Mrs. Henderson in town tonight, give you two some privacy. I will come back tomorrow afternoon." Nora started to protest, but Natalie shook her head. "You are married now. You deserve a proper wedding night without your little sister in the loft above you. I already arranged it." Grateful beyond words, Nora kissed her sister's cheek. "Thank you for everything." When the last guest had left and Natalie had ridden into town with Mrs. Henderson, Nora and Ryder found themselves alone for the first time as husband and wife. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and the spring air smelled of growing things and promise. Ryder took her hand and led her into the cabin, into the new bedroom he had built specifically for them. He had made the bed himself, a sturdy frame with a real mattress stuffed with fresh straw and covered in quilts. There were curtains on the window, a rag rug on the floor, a small dresser for their clothes. It was simple but comfortable, a space that was truly theirs. He closed the door behind them, then turned to her with a mixture of desire and nervousness on his face. "Nora, I have never." "Neither have I," she admitted, her own nerves making her voice shake slightly. He stepped closer, cupping her face in his hands. "Then we will figure it out together." He kissed her slowly, thoroughly, and she melted into him, her arms wrapping around his neck. They took their time undressing each other, awkward at first but growing more confident as clothes fell away. When they finally came together in the bed he had built, it was with tenderness and care, both of them learning the shape and feel of each other, discovering what brought pleasure. Afterward, Nora lay in her husband's arms, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow to normal. She felt changed somehow, not just in the physical sense but in something deeper. She was a wife now, part of a partnership that felt sacred and right. "I love you," Ryder murmured into her hair. "I have loved you since that first morning when you brought me stew in the rain and looked at me like you were trying to decide if I was going to rob you or help you." She laughed softly. "I love you too. I think I started falling for you the first time I saw you repairing our fence, whistling while you worked like you had not a care in the world. You made me feel like things might actually be okay." They talked late into the night, making plans and sharing dreams, occasionally kissing or touching just for the joy of being able to do so freely now. When they finally fell asleep, tangled together in their bed, Nora felt more content than she had in years. The next months passed in a blur of work and happiness. Spring turned to summer, and their small farm flourished. The chickens laid eggs that Nora sold in town, the pigs grew fat, the garden produced more vegetables than they could eat. Ryder proved to be an excellent farmer, with an intuitive sense for the land and what it needed. Natalie seemed happier too, spending more time with friends in town, slowly building a life beyond the shadow of their father's death. She had attracted the attention of a young clerk at the general store, a shy man named Daniel who stammered whenever he tried to talk to her, and Nora suspected there might be a courtship brewing. In August, nearly a year to the day since Ryder had first appeared at their cabin, Nora realized her monthly courses had not come. At first she thought it was just stress or the heat, but when another week passed and then two, she began to suspect the truth. She waited until she was certain before telling Ryder, and when she finally did, his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy, then set her down carefully as if she might break. "A baby. We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" she asked, though his reaction had already told her the answer. Happy does not begin to cover it. He kissed her forehead, her nose, her lips. "You have given me everything, Nora. A home, a family, a purpose, and now a child. I am the luckiest man alive." They told Natalie at supper, and she burst into happy tears, immediately making plans to help with the baby, talking about knitting blankets and sewing tiny clothes. That night, the three of them sat on the porch watching the stars come out, and Nora felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. Her life had taken turns she never could have predicted, had brought loss and grief but also love and joy. Her pregnancy progressed smoothly through the fall and into winter. Ryder was attentive and protective, constantly worrying about her, making sure she did not overwork herself. She felt cherished and cared for, even when she was sick in the mornings or her back ached from the growing weight of the baby. In February of 1884, Natalie announced her own news. Daniel had proposed, and she had accepted. They planned to marry in the spring, and Daniel's family had a house in town where they would live. Nora was thrilled for her sister, though she would miss having her around every day. "You gave me time to heal and find my way," Natalie told her. "Now it is time for me to build my own life, like you and Ryder have done. But I will always be grateful for everything you did for me after Papa died." "We are sisters," Nora said simply. "We take care of each other." In late March, as the snow was beginning to melt and the first signs of spring appeared, Nora went into labor. It was long and difficult, lasting nearly 20 hours. But when she finally heard her baby's first cry, all the pain was forgotten. Ryder was there beside her, his face wet with tears as the midwife placed their son in Nora's arms. "A boy," the midwife announced. "A big, healthy boy." He had dark hair like Ryder and a strong cry that suggested he would be a handful. They named him Jacob, after Ryder's father, and Nora thought she had never seen anything more beautiful than her husband holding their son for the first time, looking at the tiny bundle with such wonder and love. Natalie's wedding followed a month later, a joyous occasion made even more special by baby Jacob's presence. Nora watched her sister marry Daniel with happy tears, remembering her own wedding day and how nervous she had been, how uncertain about the future. Now, holding her son while her husband stood beside her, she felt nothing but gratitude for the path her life had taken. The years that followed were full and rich. They had 2 more children, a daughter they named Rose when Jacob was 2, and another son they called William when Rose was 3. Their farm grew and prospered, becoming known throughout the area for quality produce and eggs. Ryder expanded their operation to include cattle, buying a dozen head and gradually building a small herd. Natalie and Daniel had children of their own, 2 daughters who were close in age to Rose and William, and the cousins grew up playing together whenever the families visited. Nora loved watching her children grow, loved the life she and Ryder had built together through hard work and dedication. On quiet evenings, After the children were in bed, she and Ryder would sit on the porch like they used to, holding hands and talking about their day. Sometimes she thought back to that first night when he had camped outside their cabin, a stranger offering protection to two frightened women. She remembered how uncertain everything had felt, how scared she had been. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked him one such evening. "Giving up your plans to go north, staying here with us?" He looked at her with those steady blue eyes that had first made her feel safe all those years ago. "Not for a single moment. This was always where I was meant to be. With you." She leaned her head on his shoulder, watching the sun set over the hills, their children safe inside, their life together still unfolding. "I love you, Ryder Prescott. I love you too, Nora Prescott. Always have, always will." As the stars began to appear overhead, just like they had on that first night when Ryder had promised to keep watch until dawn, Nora felt the circle of their story complete itself. He had kept his promise in more ways than one, watching over her and Natalie not just for one night, but for all the nights that followed, building a life and a love that would last until their final days. Their farm continued to thrive into the 1890s, becoming one of the most successful in the Republic area. Jacob grew into a strong, responsible young man who loved working the land with his father. Rose inherited her mother's skill with a needle and her father's head for business, helping to expand their egg and produce sales into neighboring towns. William was the dreamer of the family, always reading books and talking about becoming a teacher someday. As Nora entered her 40s, she sometimes looked in the mirror and was surprised by the woman she saw there. The frightened, grief-stricken girl of 22 was long gone, replaced by a confident wife and mother with laugh lines around her eyes and silver threading through her dark hair. She had lived through loss and fear, but she had also known profound love and joy. Ryder aged gracefully beside her, his dark hair going gray at the temples, his face weathering from years in the sun, but his eyes remained the same, always looking at her with that mixture of love and wonder that made her feel beautiful no matter how many years passed. They celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary in April of 1903 with a party that drew friends and family from miles around. Their 3 children, now adults with lives and dreams of their own, organized the celebration. Natalie and Daniel came with their daughters, both young women now. The house rang with laughter and music, and when Ryder pulled Nora onto the makeshift dance floor in their yard, she felt like that nervous bride again, dancing with her new husband under the spring sky. 20 years, he said as they swayed together. Best 20 years of my life. We have been blessed, she agreed. More than I ever imagined possible. He kissed her there in front of everyone, not caring who saw, and their children groaned good-naturedly while their friends cheered. Nora laughed against his lips, feeling young and cherished and impossibly lucky. That night, after all the guests had left and the children had gone to their own homes or rooms, Nora and Ryder lay together in the bed he had built so many years ago. The frame was still solid, though they had replaced the mattress several times over the decades. This room had witnessed their love in all its forms, passionate and tender, joyful and comforting. "Do you remember that first night?" Nora asked. "When you camped outside our cabin? Like it was yesterday. I remember thinking what pretty eyes you had, even though you looked ready to shoot me if I made one wrong move." She laughed. "I was terrified. Of you, of everything. The world felt so big and dangerous, and Natalie and I were so alone." "You were never alone after that night," he reminded her. "I made sure of it." "Yes, you did." She turned in his arms to face him. "You saved us, Ryder, in every way that matters." "We saved each other," he corrected gently. "I was drifting before I met you, just existing. You gave me a purpose, a home, a family. Everything I have, everything I am, it is because of you." They made love slowly, with the ease and familiarity of two people who knew each other's bodies as well as their own. who had learned over 20 years how to bring each other pleasure. Afterward, Nora traced the lines on Ryder's face, memorizing them as if she did not see them every day. "Promise me something," she said softly. "Anything. Promise me that no matter how many years we have left, we will never stop being grateful for this. For us, for the life we built." He caught her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm. "I promise. Every day I wake up next to you is a gift, Nora. I have never forgotten that." They fell asleep wrapped around each other, and Nora dreamed of that first night, of a young cowboy making coffee by a fire, of 3 drunk men riding away, of dawn breaking over the hills and knowing that someone was watching over them. She dreamed of all the dawns that had followed, each one bringing new challenges and joys, each one shared with the man who had promised to keep watch and had never stopped keeping that promise. The seasons continued their endless cycle. Spring gave way to summer, summer to fall, fall to winter, and then spring again. Their children married and had children of their own, filling the farmhouse with the sound of grandchildren's laughter. Nora taught her granddaughters to sew, while Ryder showed his grandsons how to work the land and care for animals. On a warm evening in the summer of 1908, Nora and Ryder celebrated their 25th anniversary quietly, just the two of them sitting on the porch they had sat on countless times before. Their children had offered to throw another party, but they had declined, preferring this peaceful intimacy. 25 years, Nora mused. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, and sometimes it feels like we have always been together. "I like to think we were always meant to be together," Ryder said. "That somehow, out of all the places I could have ridden that day, I ended up at your cabin because fate knew you needed me and I needed you." "Do you believe in fate?" He considered the question. "I believe in us. Whether that is fate or luck or divine intervention, it does not matter. What matters is that I found you, and you let me stay." She took his hand, her fingers intertwining with his in a gesture so familiar it was like breathing. "Best decision I ever made." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Nora thought about all the sunsets they had watched together, all the quiet moments that had made up their life. Not every day had been easy. They had faced crop failures and harsh winters, childhood illnesses that had terrified them, the normal struggles of marriage and family. But through it all, they had faced everything together, their partnership never wavering. "What do you think happens after?" Nora asked suddenly. "When we are gone, what will people remember about us?" Ryder was quiet for a moment, thinking, "I hope they remember that we loved each other well, that we built something lasting, that we were kind to people who needed help, just like someone helped us when we needed it most. I hope they remember that love is worth fighting for," Nora added. "That even when things seem impossible, even when you are scared and alone, good things can still happen if you are brave enough to let them." He squeezed her hand. "They will remember because we will teach them. Our children, our grandchildren, everyone who comes after us. They will know our story." As darkness fell and stars began to appear, Nora leaned her head on her husband's shoulder, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing. 25 years had passed since a cowboy had ridden up to their cabin and offered to keep watch until dawn. But in all the important ways, he had never stopped watching over her, never stopped protecting and loving her, never stopped being the answer to a prayer she had not even known she was praying that desperate night so long ago. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For staying. For everything." He kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for letting me, for building this life with me, for loving me." They stayed on the porch until the night grew too cold to remain outside, then went inside to their bed, their home, their life. And as Nora drifted off to sleep in her husband's arms, she thought about how strange and wonderful it was that a single moment, a single decision, could change everything. If she had told Ryder to leave that first day, If she had not trusted him to keep watch, if she had not accepted his proposal, her entire life would have been different. But she had made the right choices, and those choices had led her here, to this moment of perfect contentment and peace. She had lived through grief and fear, but she had also lived through love and joy in equal measure. She had raised children and built a home and spent 25 years beside a man who made every day brighter just by being in it. As she fell asleep, she smiled, already looking forward to the next dawn, and the one after that, and all the dawns she and Ryder would share in the years to come. They had kept their promises to each other, built their life on a foundation of trust and love and partnership. And that, she thought, was the best kind of happily ever after there was.